and seconded to approve pre-qualification for Symponia Farms. Any further discussion? Oh, is that better? Okay. There's no discussion. Let's call roll.
David LaMontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
Yes.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman Johnson, you have 5 yeses. Motion passes.
Okay. Next, number 2 is Gen King LLC. Board members wish comment or motion, whatever it may be.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to deny the application of Gen King. And after discussion, I think we can get into the reason why after we get through discussion.
Is there support?
Support.
Okay. Discussion on the denial of applicant number 2, Gen King LLC. Any discussion?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to find it in my notes.
Okay. Is this about ready to call for the vote?
And we will need to cite a statutory provision for the denial before we vote. We'll need to amend the motion to make sure we incorporate that.
I think he's working on that.
Mr. Chairman, regarding the application Gen King LLC, one of the applicants is a caregiver who is, in the last 3 years, has taken in consulting fees and charges for operating facilities for other caregivers to the tune of $1.5 million in 3 years. This is clearly outside of what was dictated for in the 2008 MMMA as far as making a profit. In one year, the consulting fees were $336,000, $325,000 another year, $320,000 yet a third year. And that continues. There's been $90,000 in this calendar year as well. I think this is clearly out of bounds. In regards to the tax returns for this applicant, reported income was significantly to the tune of almost $100,000 less than even the consulting fees that were taken in here.
Okay. Anyone else for discussion yet?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I just, as our learned counsel has mentioned, I'm curious as to under what section are we deliberating this denial? Perhaps that would assist me in focusing on the requirements to meet that burden. I don't know. Is there something?
I think he's working on that.
Yep. I don't disagree, by the way, with Mr. Bailey. I'm just curious. I just want to be sure that whatever the statutory requirement is fits the deal.
Okay, you have to remember that there's minimum requirements set, so to be consistent, you have to make sure that there's something that you're able to correlate back to 4022 or.
Yeah, the form changed. I'm still looking for it.
Yeah, I see that myself.
Where are you seeing it?
Integrity, moral character, reputation. Well, it is a new sheet.
If that's the one you're looking for,
Yeah.
that is 402-3A.
Oh,
Yep, right.
On page 3.
The very first one. Yep.
it didn't used to be at the top, I don't think.
Nope. It was at the bottom. That is it.
4023A, the integrity, moral character, and reputation, based on the application, the way that they've performed under the 2008 law is inconsistent with that law. And I think that goes to how they're going to treat the new law. There are going to be many aspects of the new law that people don't like. but they are going to be expected to have the integrity to follow that law. And we are going to rely, both the department, law enforcement, and the board, we're going to rely on these folks to voluntarily do the right thing when no one's looking, because we can't be looking everywhere.
Okay, did you get that? Okay. Any other discussion?
Yeah, me again here, sorry. Just if I can ask Ms. Jordan, I have a note here that there was a failure to disclose an arrest. Am I off base? Did I miss something?
There was a failure to disclose a juvenile arrest by the other individual who is the other applicant.
One of the applicants.
So one of the two applicants has a failed to disclose.
Yes, other than the one that you've been referring to, this is the other applicant.
So we need to add a second reason for denial, 402 to C. 402-2C.
Yep.
Knowingly submitted a license application containing false information.
The reason I bring this up is this integrity, moral character, and reputation business is going to be a little bit of a slippery slope. A lot of subjectivity. So I'm glad there was something else we were to rely upon here, because that's what stood out to me, not necessarily that other stuff. I don't disagree. It looks a little shady, but I mean, who am I, right? So I'm on board.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Anyone else? All right, let's call roll on applicant number 2, Jen King LLC, denial under the stated reasons.
Motion to deny under 4023A and 4022C. That is David LaMontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
Yes.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman Johnson, you have 5 yeses. Motion passes.
Okay. Number 3, Urban Medical Farms LLC for pre-qualification.
Mr. Chairman, I move that Urban Medical has pre-qualification status for pending application.
Is there support?
Yes.
Okay, it's been moved and supported to pre-qualify Urban Medical Farms. Any further discussion by anyone? Hearing none, call roll. Whoop.
I'm
Sorry.
checking my notes. My notes are not in the same order as the agenda. I'm sorry, I have it now.
Okay. You ready?
Yes.
Okay, let's call the roll, please.
David LaMontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
Yes.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman Johnson, you have 5 yeses. Motion passes.
Okay, number 4, Choice Labs LLC for pre-qual. Any wishes from board members?
Mr. Chairman, I move that Choice Labs has pre-qualification status for a pending application.
Is there support? Their discussion.
Mr. Chairman, this application, the applicant itself looks to be pretty stellar in his business dealings. My concern is not what he's done so far in business, but going forward. He is going to be an absentee, from what I can gather from the state police report, an absentee owner of this business, and that he has a relative that's going to be involved in running it day to day. I know there was a inspection several months ago where some improper product was found to be in the dispensary, and it was removed when they were told that it was improper. But when you go back to the various advertising websites this week, those prohibited products are back for sale.
It's important to base decisions on the record that the board has in front of you.
Sorry?
It's important to base your decisions on the record the board has in front of you and the investigation that the department provided to the entire board.
This was in the application.
Thank you.
Okay. And I don't think for a second that the applicant is would be approving of this, but I think what it shows is he's not really in charge and running this operation, and that's the problem for me. It's not the applicant itself; it's how this entity is actually being run currently. That's going to be a problem.
Yeah, and the only thing I would caution is, again, looking at the record in front of you. I mean, that would be like me saying I own a pharmacy, but my pharmacist might make a bad decision. So we can't predict that, and we can't assume or make assumptions that that'll happen. So it's just really looking, what we have. We don't want to get into where we, not really slander, but we're presuming, we're making assumptions that something could happen, but there's a lot that could happen. And if we do that with every single applicant that comes before us, we're going to have a long road. So I would just caution that you don't say something will happen if you don't know that that's happened. Now, if they have to come back before us because they have an inspection and then that's a different situation. And then you look at that differently. That's just from my experience what I would caution you to be careful of predicting based on what you're reading.
Right, and I did that, and that's just based on what's going on currently, and that's where I'm coming from on this application.
David? My comment on this is not just for this one, but it's probably for a lot of them. I'm probably going to support this, but I'm going to say that when this applicant comes back for the licensing phase 2, they better have this stuff straightened out, or they're going to, spend a lot of funds, good funds and whatnot to get to that position. And along with that, and I'm hoping that a lot of applicants that are either watching or here, these CPA assertions or whatever, however you want to say that word. Close enough. Okay. I'm starting to I'm seeing things that, I hope that's right. And my message is to the CPAs that are signing off on these things. I hope you're looking at the right things, or at least researching them and making sure it is what you're being told it is, or it is what you think it is. That's not necessarily an issue on this one, but it's popping up more and more. At least as I go through these applications, and that's a concern. So with that, I'm done.
Mr. Chairman, if I could speak to the improper or product, not acceptable product, that's something that we're seeing routinely, and we expected to see it, and we expect that we will continue to work with applicants even once they are licensed to make sure that product is appropriate. Our enforcement section has been working very diligently and been putting out advisories, and as we find products that are questionable, we are giving information out to potential licensees to try to give them some guidance. So we expect that to happen over the course, and part of the regulatory process is to work to get these licensees and potential licensees into compliance.
I think that we all have to remember that, because we had a deregulated process that we're now regulating, and we're trying to, it's a difficult, but kudos to the department for working with them and not just slashing them and saying you're out. So I think that's important.
And also, I think that some of us obviously have more information on many of these organizations and individuals than others. And therefore, I think there's probably a really great need for us to look at what's on paper, because that may disadvantage us or advantage us. So again, I'm with you, Nicole, in that we really just pay attention to what has been presented to us.
Okay, the motion is to approve pre-qual for applicant number 4, Choice Labs. There's no other discussion. Let's go ahead and call the roll.
David LaMontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
No.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman Johnson, you have 4 yeses, 1 no, motion passes.
Okay, number 5, Refinery Ventures LLC for pre-application. Any wishes, desires from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I think for the purpose of the discussion, I'll move the Refinery Ventures pre-qualification status for pending application.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded for pre-qual notification for Refinery Ventures. Open for discussion.
I think in order, I just want to kind of keep the train running on time here. I've got a note here that that there were some non-disclosures in here, but I'm not sure they were statutorily required. And maybe Ms. Jordan could square that away for me.
Fortunately, I thought I had that noted. I believe they were traffic violations.
There were more than traffic violations. There was more than traffic.
I'm sorry, I thought I had those written
There
down.
was actually more than that.
Yes, there were more than traffic violations. There were a number of other issues.
With one applicant, there were undisclosed charges and or arrests for open intoxicants and open alcohol in a vehicle, which the applicant explained as he or she believed was traffic related, received tickets in the mail, and did not believe that they were misdemeanors and did not initially disclose because didn't believe that they were required to be disclosed.
Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, on this one, there was several of the applicants on this application are caregivers. They have pretty substantial electric bills showing pretty significant grow operations. They claim that none of their money that they have, a bunch of cash deposits that seem to be unexplained. The claim is that is not from the sale of marijuana. That doesn't make sense given my background and what I've seen and what I know. So when I look at that, and then we have one of the applicants has an income on his tax returns 1 year of $10,000, and at the same time he's depositing $20,000 into this business. It just seems that somebody living below the poverty line, if they're doing things correctly, isn't going to have that kind of money. That doesn't make any sense to me. I think this is an integrity issue on a couple of these applicants.
And Don, I kind of agree with you on this. I cited 40238 as well as a reason for my recommendation of denial.
Any other discussion?
Just for completeness, there were a couple other undisclosed items. One was as described as a brush fire on a construction site that did not result in any court appearance or arrest. not disclosed as the applicant explained because did not think it needed to be, and another involving a traffic violation that does not appear to meet the criteria for consideration.
Mr. Chairman, being that I made the motion, I would either amend it
Withdraw.
or withdraw it. Whatever the proper protocol would be.
Withdrawal would be
Withdraw.
the simplest.
I withdraw the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Who seconded that? Does it-
Withdraw, Nicole.
Okay. All right, we're back to square one on number 5. Refinery Ventures.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we deny the application Refinery Ventures LLC under section 402(3)(a).
Second.
Okay,
And if you could be a little more specific about what provision under 402(3)(a), there was a reference to integrity. Is that what you're looking
The
at?
integrity, moral
specifically?
character, and reputation of the applicant.
And could we include C2?
Submitted a license containing false information, or did that all get corrected?
I think that's a question.
I was following up on the arson charge. I show that that was disclosed. And there
Mine
was,
is the integrity and
Yeah, I think
just 402.
I think there may have been a discrepancy about what that charge was the issue, and it was explained more fully.
to a lesser offense, but
Okay, so it was clear. I just want to make sure we didn't have to add that. That's what I was.
no,
that
I was
all clear.
concerned when it was said that that was a failure to disclose because it wasn't.
Yeah, I was just
I
making
didn't believe
sure
that it
you saw
was.
that as all corrected. Okay.
Okay, any more discussion?
Just one thing, and I think the board's been consistent in this notion that these failures to disclose are going to be viewed negatively by this body. We've been consistent. I think everybody's in the same boat. I mean, there are applicants here that have laid bare many, many things. Some are required, some are not required. And I mean, the safe thing to do is disclose these things, whether you think it's going to count or not. My wife yells at me all the time. Don't think you know what I'm saying. Just ask me, right? So make sure you're disclosing these things. That's it.
And I will second that. It really, when you find that, from my perspective, you pretty much stop going through the application because you have a denial right with that position, if indeed it qualifies for that. So, thanks, David. Any other discussion? None. Okay, call the roll on a denial for Refinery Ventures.
David Lamontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
Yes.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman Johnson, you have 5 yeses. Motion passes.
Number 6, the applicant for pre-qualification is Larry. Then call the roll on number 6, Chief Officer Land Investments.
David Lamontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover, Donald Bailey,
No.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
Oh,
Chairman Johnson, you have 3 yeses, 2 noes. Motion passes.
okay, number 7, Blue Soul Biomedical LLC for pre-qualification.
Mr. Chairman, I move that Blue Soul has pre-qualification status for pending application. Second.
Okay, it's moved and supported to pre-qualify Blue Soul Biomedical. Open for discussion.
So the statute requires a knowing intention, that they knowingly submitted an application for a license that under this act contains false information. In past meetings, we've had some that it's been very clear that it was knowing. But I think it's always appropriate under the statutory ineligibility for the board to consider the exact language of the ineligibility.
I think it's different if prior to the vote, we don't hear for them, or there's not a response, or there's not an explanation. In other boards, that's what I have used. And then if we have a person or applicant that didn't respond with what we charged, or when we asked for clarification, then we assume that what we're reading is correct. And so that would be a failure to disclose if they don't take the time to give us that description or that information. So again, when we're just considering pre-qualification and they did come forward, now if they hadn't responded or hadn't taken the time to clarify anything, then I would have a huge issue with that, because why would they not want to say, hey, this is the reason, or whatever the case may be.
How would you handle on these other boards an inadequate explanation?
Well, it's always interpretation of the statute, and that's where you get. So you have to look at what's ahead of you. You have to make, it's not guilty until proven innocent. I mean, that's just not the world we live in. So you have to make sure that you're addressing what you have in front of you, giving that applicant reasonable doubt. We all have busy lives, things going on. You're trying to meet a deadline. You're trying to get a lot in. Am I going to remember something from 5 years ago, 5 weeks ago? And I have 8 kids and crazy life. I mean, so I might not remember 5 weeks ago, and that's no lie. Maybe not yesterday, but I think we just have to look at that and not assume that everybody's out for a negative intent. We have to look for positive intent and truly try to get these people through the process. And if they're not doing the right thing, there'll be a lot of checks and balances. They're gonna find that not doing the right thing.
And it doesn't appear that we're 100% sure that it should have been disclosed either. So
it's interpretation. I mean, I can relate it to pharmacy, that somebody interprets a pharmacy rule, which is way more black and white than this situation. Exactly. And we still have to go back and we educate them, and we send an inspector, and we look at things differently. So I don't think that there was a true negligence. I don't want to have that on there. I don't want them to read that. I think they know what we're going to take them through, and we're going to fund it. Or at least I hope that's what.
Does that answer your question?
No.
I was going to say, it doesn't,
I'm just,
no, it doesn't mind either.
I'm stuck on the 8-kid thing. Holy Moses.
Any other questions, Dave?
Nope. It's rock and roll.
Okay. Go ahead and call the roll on pre-qual for Blue Soul Biomedical LLC.
David LaMontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
No.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
Yes. But it's got a big X behind it.
Chairman Johnson, you have 5 yeses, 1 no, motion passes.
4 yeses.
4 yeses, yep.
She said 5.
Oh, 4 yeses, sorry about that.
Okay, next, number 8, Humblebee Products LLC for pre-qualification.
Mr. Chairman, I move that Humblebee Products has pre-qualification status for a pending application.
Second.
Moved and supported to act on a pre-qualification for Humblebee Products. Open for discussion. No discussion?
We do have a non-disclosure on this one.
We do. Yes, we do.
Was it the arrest on Christine Norman?
Yes.
You sure on that?
Yes, it was. Yes.
It's from 1969. It's an old marijuana arrest.
It is, but the disclosure says ever. The statute makes no limitation, so Just being accurate here.
Right.
Yeah, I saw the date and.
And again, intent, I think we're still looking at knowingly and intentional as well.
Is that BCAD? What was that? What year was that?
I'm sorry.
All of them today.
Cranky.
I wasn't born
Been busy since, apparently. I'm down here because I'm in trouble. I'm next to the attorneys now. Sorry.
It's not true, but that's okay.
We might have to move you one seat over next time.
Probably closer to the door, preferably, right?
Okay, let's get back to normal here.
On Mr. Chairman, on Humblebee, the other issue I have on this, the non-disclosed arrest based on what we've done in the past. But I also think this is a straw man operation. That the true applicant is the son. I know he's identified as himself as running the place, and I think that this is an application by a family member for someone who is not on the application. We don't know why that is, because there was nothing that allowed us to, the state police or Laura, to look into what I believe to be the true applicant on this owner on this application. That does concern me.
But I still think too, we have to get out of what we think and the assumption and really just truly look at what's on paper. I think to deny based on what we think and it's not on paper is it's not fair to the applicant.
Still, we have the non-disclosure issue.
Of 1969, and again, knowingly and intentional from 1969 is.
There was an explanation in your packet about that arrest,
Right.
indicating that the charges ultimately were dismissed.
Exactly.
The court had no records.
No more discussion? All right, let's call the roll on a pre-qualification for Humblebee Products, LLC.
David LaMontagne,
Is this a motion to,
pre-qualified.
Pre-qualified.
yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
No.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
No.
Chairman Johnson, you have 3 yeses, 2 noes. Motion passes.
Okay, number 9.
Can I just ask a clarification?
Sure.
Clarification.
Is this on?
I just have a clarification question. I don't know if this is on, but I can talk loud.
Clarification question on a pre-qualification application, as these are approved or denied based on who the applicants are, and then they move to licensure, and we find that there is a different person involved or something changes, do we require them to report that and then we would get new information, or how does that work?
Absolutely. According to the rules, pre-qualification status is a pending status.
Correct.
And any changes to ownership or anything that's identified during the continued investigation process, the inspection process, they would be required to file new disclosures, and that would be then represented to the board to consider.
Which I was pretty sure of that, but I want to make sure the board is aware of that, because we don't, I'm just trying to protect all 5 of us. You don't want to get yourself into a situation where you're predicting or you're being presumptuous based on something. If the owners change or anything happens, we will catch all of that, and that will be given to us in due time to then make a different decision potentially. Okay.
And also the assumption is that even when they are licensed, they still have to advise of any changes. So it's not just
If
prior
there's any
to.
changes at all during the process, that would come back to us. So don't get hung up on that.
Right.
Some of us are, I think, reading too much and too into it. So we just have to be, just stick with what we have.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily for the last case, but just in general for all of these. I
Exactly.
just wanted to make a clarifying point.
Well, and I think generally I probably have, in many instances, I have more specific information to what's going on here that the rest of you don't.
Yeah, so I would just
And-
caution you to just keep your hat on, this is just what you're dealing with. This is just pre-qualification. I just need the basics. 'Cause
But I'm not gonna check
I
my
get it.
common sense or my
I get
experience
it.
at the
Yeah.
door. I
And-
think that's why I was picked for the board.
And Don, it would be helpful for us if you can maybe ahead of time advise the staff of that information as well, so that hopefully they can look into it prior to our meeting.
I think some of the stuff has been
Okay,
been done that way.
great, because it would be helpful if that way we understand and we know exactly what's going on, and we're not assuming. So if we can get the information and have the staff do the due diligence prior to the meeting, it would be helpful.
And one of the most important things that we do from the very get-go is to try to figure out who are the real applicants. So we look at a lot of information, and we've had applicants where we've questioned that, and we've done digging, and if we find facts that lead us to that conclusion, then that would certainly be presented, but we didn't identify any facts that could be pointed to on this one.
Okay, number 9. I believe the MI is for Michigan, Loud Flower Farms LLC. Comments, motions? Nothing?
69.
Take a break?
I believe, Mr. Chairman, I believe on this, is there a motion?
No, there isn't. That's what we're waiting for.
For terms of discussion, I move that Michigan Loudflower Farms has pre-qualification status for a pending application.
There's support. No support? Motion fails. Is there another motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we deny Michigan Loud Flower Farms LLC Section 402(3). I would say A, but also
Which one?
G. No, I'm sorry, not G.
Which one on the other page? 2? C?
C. 4022C.
Yep, that's correct.
And with 3A, is there a specific part of 3A you're referring to? That encompasses a lot of different pieces you'll see on your form. It's broken down a little bit into several segments.
Right. I'm sorry, the applicant.
And are you looking at integrity
Yes.
specifically on this one, for example? Okay.
Okay, is there a support before we get too far down the
I'll second.
second? Okay. It's been moved and supported for a denial of applicant number 9, Michigan Loud Flower Farms. Discussion. I mean, I have down 2 non-disclosures, Chris, is that correct?
It is not, I was just trying to
A whole
make it
bunch of
easier
stuff.
and read it the other way and then
Oh.
discuss it and then come up with
Yeah,
the
no,
reason.
I get
Sorry.
you.
I just want to be efficient.
They don't like us doing that. though.
I know. But I said for discussion, I'm going to
I got you. Yep.
For me, it was the integrity and the non-disclosure.
non-disclosures. for
Both.
sure.
Mhm.
And that applies to each of the 2 applicants, it looks like.
Yep.
Just to what David said earlier, we've definitely set a precedence of it has to be disclosed. Like
Mhm.
that
We're very consistent with that.
My notes for the one being 2016, not very long. ago.
Mhm.
current. Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, if there's no other discussion, call the roll on denial of Michigan Loud Flower Farms.
David LaMontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
Yes.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman Johnson, you have 5 yeses. Motion passes.
Okay, number 10, Aim High Meds LLC. For pre-qualification, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that AIM High Meds has pre-qualification statute for a pending application.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and supported to pre-qualify Aim High Meds. Is there any discussion? No discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'm trying to find it in my notes. It's on the last page. I'm all set. I have nothing to add here.
So we'll call roll for pre-qualification of Aim High Meds.
David LaMontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
Yes.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman Johnson, you have 5 yeses. Motion passes.
Number 11, for pre-qualification, Green Peak Industries LLC.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve Green Peak Industries LLC
Pre-qual.
for a pre-qualification status
Okay. Is there support?
for a pending
Support.
application.
Support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported to allow Green Peak Industries for pre-qualification. Pending. Any discussion? If not, please call the roll.
David LaMontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
Yes.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman Johnson, you have 5 yeses. Motion passes.
12, Celio Manufacturing Strategies LLC for pre-qualification. Board's wishes. No wishes today?
Mr. Chair, I move that Filio Manufacturing has pre-qualification statute for a pending application.
Second.
It's been moved and supported to pre-qualify Filio Manufacturing Strategies. Open for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, in noting some of the business dealings regarding Mr. Kinney, the applicant here, there was significant talk about his business as a caregiver, where he's made a significant amount of profit. This is in violation of the 2008 law. But really what's sticks out to me is his investment of $50,000 in 2016 into processing equipment into another LLC to process marijuana products, concentrates and such. And this is a year and a half before it was even legal under the 2008 law. That didn't happen until the fall, winter of 2016. So I think there's an integrity issue here on what was done under the 2008 law, and I think that's going to continue under the 2016 law. I don't have any faith that this applicant is going to do what's necessary, because there are going to be things that we do that are regulations in the new law that a lot of folks are not going to like, and they're going to try to get around. And they're going to do that, just as happened here in 2000 under the 2008 law.
Any other? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
My comment is, I think we're assuming that he was utilizing the equipment, and also that he was utilizing the equipment in Michigan as well.
No, it's actually responded to in correspondence that he was doing that. That's in our packet.
Other discussion? No further discussion? Okay, Call the roll for pre-qualification for Filio Manufacturing Strategy.
David Lamontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
No.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
No.
Chairman Johnson, you have 3 yeses, 2 noes, motion passes.
Okay, next is number 13, BlackRock Management LLC. Is there a motion or?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we deny BlackRock. Which one do you have first?
Just the regular L.
BlackRock Management.
BlackRock Management, 3.
No, not the third.
BlackRock Management,
The
LLC.
one 8 on.
I would move to deny, all my forms are messed up, the integrity, moral character, and reputation of the applicant in regards to this dispensary under BlackRock Management.
Is there support? No support? What's the wishes?
No support, the motion fails. Right.
Motion fails. Open on BlackRock Management LLC. Feelings of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that BlackRock Management LLC has pre-qualification status for pending application.
Second.
It's been moved and supported to pre-qualify BlackRock Management LLC. Open for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, this is one of the provisioning centers that participates heavily in the recreational marijuana market, which we don't have in Michigan. This is a medical law that we're contemplating here. This application participated to the extent that Detroit police executed a search warrant at his building in Detroit, where a recreational THC expo was going on. And I think as much as anything, this illustrates the problem we have going forward with separating the recreational from the medical. We have medical, we don't have recreational. And if we have somebody on the medical side that's participating in the recreational side, that's a real problem for law enforcement. That's a real problem for communities. That's a problem for public safety. And that would be my position.
Any other discussion?
Did I miss something?
I didn't see a felony or any kind of charge in there. I didn't see
I was
any kind
talking
of
to-
felony charge.
Chris here, am I missing something?
That's subject to interpretation. There is an extensive letter from the attorney on behalf of BlackRock Management, and they provided a number of attachments that were in your materials explaining the nature of how they were linked. I hope the board looked at that clearly and drew their own. I mean, it's a matter of interpretation as to whether you believe what was presented.
One of the problems we have in some of that information is it's an open investigation, and correctly so, the Detroit Police Department isn't able to share because it's still in court, and I'm not sure who all the defendants are, but they're not able to share everything as they would on a closed case. This is current and ongoing.
Right.
But again, we are in a pre-qualification status. So just like if I'm in trouble and the Attorney General is investigating me as a professional, my board would not deny me until they've been through that diligence. So correct me if I'm wrong, AG office. So if it moves forward and that investigation concludes, or there are some findings and or charges, that would then come back and presumably that applicant wouldn't be able to, if they were charged individually, cannot be a part of the business as we move forward, right? If there's becomes some sort of conviction, that all has to be updated.
Well, this is a pre-qualification.
That's what I'm saying.
So anything that happens, if if charges are leveled against the applicant, then certainly that would be something that would be presented with the step 2. And it was after licensure, they're required to report it, and we certainly follow up on those kinds of things and keep our eye on things that we know that are pending. And then it would be brought back before the board for consideration.
Correct. And if they were to renew the license without disclosing that, knowing that they had been convicted, then that brings a whole nother set of charges.
Correct.
Okay.
So at this point, for this one, you know that you need to continue monitoring it, correct?
Well, there are no charges pending against this individual. And this, of course, anytime we hear of any kind of potential criminal activity with any applicant, that's definitely documented, and we keep an eye on that.
Thank you.
Consistently across the board, not just Black Rock.
Right,
General.
any, and there have been a number of them. And our enforcement team is on top of it.
So our current motion is, go ahead.
To approve.
To approve.
Another question I have is, what if they don't move to step 2? This is an operating one, right? I believe.
He is temporarily operating as of September 15th. If he doesn't have his license, he has to close his doors. Yes.
Or they have to get to us before that,
Correct.
which is what, 3 months away?
Not really.
2.5? Okay.
8 weeks.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Okay, clerk, call the roll.
The motion is to pre-qualify.
David LaMontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
No.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
Yes.
Johnson, you have 4 yeses, 1 no. Motion passes.
14, Black Rock Management 3, LLC.
I moved that.
Black Rock Management, number 3 LLC has pre-qualification status for a pending application.
There's support?
Support.
Moved and supported to pre-qualify Black Rock Management 3. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, these are essentially the same applications. My objection would remain the same.
Any other discussion? Go ahead and call the roll on pre-qual for Black Rock Management 3.
David LaMontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
Pre-qualify for Lantos Transportation.
Mr. Chairman, I move we pre-qualify Lantos Transport LLC has pre-qualification status for a pending application.
Second.
Been moved and supported to pre-qualify Lantos Transport LLC. Have we approved any other transporters yet?
We do have one that's pre-qualified, and they are up for actual licensure further down on the list.
So okay.
I think this would be our second if you pre-qualify them.
Okay.
I don't,
There was one out of the Detroit area, and there's one out of Lansing, and now this is the third.
we denied one. I don't recall the other one, but that's okay.
Okay, no, I just wondered if we were moving forward on that, on having the ability to move these people. We're giving them, a license here. Someone's got to be able to transport that stuff.
Right. Yeah, there is one under license.
Okay. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, call the roll on pre-qualification for Lantos Transport.
David LaMontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
Yes.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman, you have 5 yeses, motion passes.
16, Adams Family Farms LLC for pre-qualification.
Mr. Chairman, I move that Adams Family Farm has pre-qualification status for a pending application.
Second.
It's been moved and supported to pre-qualify Adams Family Farms. Discussion? Any? No discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I have several concerns. I think probably one of them, we can talk about it briefly, but direct it to Chris Jordan. There seems to be some issue with the money, the CPA attestation, and that's something that will be cleared up and nailed down before the second stage.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Some pre-qualifications, they show generalized income, but or capitalization, but we certainly have to have that tied down at step 2. Yes.
Okay. So in the future, we probably won't be accepting photographs of money as a CPA attestation.
Now, counting is really a lot better. Yeah.
That's all I had.
Would a video with some counting work?
Skype.
Skype. Okay. Any other discussion? All right. Call a roll on pre-qualification Adams Family Farms.
David LaMontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
Yes.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman, you have 5 yeses, motion passes.
Okay, number 17, the Fire Station Precinct 1 LLC for pre-qualification. Any wishes of the board members?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to deny Fire Station Precinct 1 LLC under section 402(3) A for the applicant.
Support.
Okay, been moved and supported to deny Fire Station's precinct of a pre-application. Discussion?
And again, you'll want to clarify for your motion whether the specific provision of 4023 is, for example, integrity, business and personal and business probity, financial ability, et cetera.
Is that you're looking at?
Yes. Yes, 402(3)A as regards to the applicant.
Okay.
And just to be clear, I'm sorry, the integrity of the applicant is what you're looking at?
Right.
Thank you.
As well, I believe there are some undisclosed arrests, which would be 402(2)C as to the applicant.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, let's call a roll on denial of number 17, the Fire Station Precinct 1.
David LaMontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
Yes.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman Johnson, you have 5 yeses, motion passes.
Number 18, pre-qualification on How Smooth It Is, Inc. For pre-qualification.
Mr. Chair, I move that How Smooth It Is has pre-qualification statute for a pending application.
Second.
It's been moved and supported to pre-qualify How Smooth It Is. Discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I have the same concern on this one that I addressed with Ms. Jordan regarding the CPA attestation and the source of funds. It looks really really slim right now, and that's something that will be tied up and put together before stage 2.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, let's call a roll on pre-qual for How Smooth It Is, Inc.
David Lamontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
Yes.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman, you have 5 yeses. Motion passes.
Number 19, pre-qualification for Precision Safety Innovation Laboratories, DBA PSI Labs. This would be our second lab, right?
First.
Oh, our very first one was a lab.
Oh, that's true. I apologize.
I mean, this would be the first kind of operating lab.
Correct. Correct. This is first operating lab.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion that Precision Safety Innovation Laboratories, LLC, has pre-qualification status for pending approval.
Your support. I'll support. Keep it moving. Okay, the motion is to pre-qualify. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this application looks really good, with one exception that I think we need to keep in mind, and everyone needs to keep in mind. We have a medical law in Michigan. We don't have a recreational law. So if somebody is engaged in the recreational use and promoting recreational marijuana at this stage, we may have something different come November, and it's a different conversation, but that's not where we're at today. And I see in some of the financials, a substantial amount of money came to the lab from High Times Cannabis Cup for work that they did for them. And that's clearly supporting the recreational market, which we don't have in Michigan. And I think that's something that causes me great concern. I know there's a lot of money to be made by a lot of people in this business, but we have to have the integrity to do the right thing the right way, particularly when people aren't looking, because the enforcement folks at LARA can't be everywhere. Law enforcement can't be everywhere. That's a concern for me that somebody in the medical field is participating actively in the recreational.
Okay. Any other discussion? Go ahead and call a roll on number 19, Precision Safety Innovation Laboratories, LLC, for pre-qualification.
David Lamontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
Yes.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman, you have 5 yeses. Motion passes.
Okay, before we move to the next, I hope these 19 that we've just covered, whether they were denied or approved or whatever, there's 3 things that continually come up, and I'm saying this more for the new apps or whatever it is coming in. The CPA is really getting questionable on, as you've heard board members talk. Let's make sure them are solid. Disclosures, I think we mentioned it more than multiple times at every meeting. Please make sure you disclose all the way back to at least 1969. And then the third one is what board member Bailey just talked about. We are approving medical marijuana applications, not recreational. And it does make things not look well when we review these and you find those kind of things about recreational. That might change in November, who knows? But right now, keep your business to medical marijuana. Okay, now, you guys you want a break or no?
We're good.
You're good? Good, okay. Chris, you want to briefly explain what B state operating licensing applications?
Certainly. The next section we're going into are those who are applying for their actual state operating license. Some of those already have pre-qualification status. Some of those are going forward in both step 1 and step 2 at the same time. So the first applicant has not been pre-qualified yet. This is for a full licensure, both the pre-qualification and the state operating license for 4 stacked Class C licenses for VB Chesaning.
Is that 1 vote or 4?
4 votes because it's 4 licenses.
And then what we'll need for each license is a motion to either grant or deny the application. A motion to grant the application also gives the applicant pre-qualification status when you're looking at a full application.
So 1 motion 4 times, correct?
Or is it 8 motions?
That's my next question.
No, if you grant licensure, you are in so doing, you're granting pre-qualification. So you do not need a separate motion for pre-qualification and licensure. Just understand that if you grant full qualification to an applicant who has not previously been granted pre-qualification, you are granting pre-qualification.
So,
4 votes.
right, to clarify, this applicant is looking at 4 licenses. I'm sorry, I think we're muddling it a little bit. 1 applicant, you either grant or deny the application. They're applying for 4 licenses, all with the same information. I think we need 1 vote to approve or grant or deny the application.
Right.
It includes all of the applications, right?
So on your example sheet that we were given, it's option number 3, the motion to grant. We can do that 1 time for the 4 licenses?
That's correct.
Okay.
And again, understanding that since this applicant has not already been pre-qualified, a motion to grant the application does also give pre-qualification status. You're handling it all at once here.
It's a lesser included approval.
That's right.
I guess 1 vote or 4 then? 4,
1.
right?
1
to
vote.
do it.
1
Mr.
motion,
Chairman.
1 vote.
I move to grant VB Chesaning LLC. Do I need to expound on the file numbers to separate them?
No, they don't, you don't, Don.
Okay. Application for the number 4 Class C licenses.
Support.
Discussion. No discussion? Is the motion correct? You legal people?
The motion is to grant the application for a license for the licenses for VB Chesaning.
Right.
And that would again include pre-qualification status, to be clear.
Okay. Seeing no more discussion, let's call the roll on licensing VB Chesaning LLC.
David Lamontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
Yes.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman Johnson, you have 5 yeses. Motion passes.
That's all covered now with you folks, right?
Yes. Mhm.
Number 2, applicant Capital Transport 4A license.
Yes, Mr. Johnson, they were previously granted pre-qualification status for a pending application on May 3rd of this year.
Mr. Chair, I move to grant Capital Transport's application for an operating license.
Second.
It's been moved and supported to grant a license to Capital Transport. Any other discussion? If not, let's call the roll on granting license number 2.
David LaMontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
Yes.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman Johnson, you have 5 yeses. Motion passes.
Number 3, Can Arbor Inc. for a license to operate a provisioning center. Should have said air transport on another one, I'm sorry.
They were granted pre-qualification status for pending application on April 19th.
So we need a motion to either grant or deny the application for the state operating license.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
I move to grant Can Arbor, I guess is how you say it, application for operating license.
Support.
It's been moved and supported to grant a license to Can Arbor Inc. For a provisioning center. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, regarding this one, I was a no vote on the prequal, and just to reassert the same issues. There's issues that need to be looked into by the state police, and they have not had that opportunity regarding the financials. It certainly looks like, from my experience in law enforcement, that this is a money laundering and a tax evasion issue. It was laid out very explicitly in the records that we were able to review. And in looking at some of the information on the step 2 application process, in their marketing plan, they suggest, it's written by them in their marketing plan, that they would like to participate in Cannabis Cup. Cannabis Cup participation would be an appropriate marketing venue. Now, these are completely recreational events, and not only are they signaling that they're going to step outside the medical, they are letting us know directly they're going to step outside the medical application of marijuana. And I would oppose issuing a license. And this goes to the associated file for this applicant.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I got just something. I think, so when this came up before, there was some debate, and I might have used the term money laundering. Unfortunately, that's not the correct term. That's not accurate. Sorry I said it. But, the regulatory climate has been created here, forces people to be creative. And there's no other way to put it. Frankly, these folks here, everybody that's listed here has been vetted once already through a significant onerous process. And I take solace in the fact that whatever regularities are there or are not there will be examined as we continue to monitor these folks and their licensing operations. So I have zero concerns.
In regards to the comments on the money laundering, we had an industry CPA stand up at 2 separate meetings and echo the same thing. And those weren't my words. They were the same as my words, but those were somebody who's certainly much more in tune with the accounting in this business than I am. His numbers were actually much larger than what I had estimated. I would rely on.
I would just caution the board to keep their decisions based on the record you have before you in the documents provided by the Bureau. Thank you.
And I think my position is supported by the documents that we all had the chance to review.
Ready to vote?
Yep.
I have a procedural question before we vote on this. Not on this one, but these ones that are being approved for licensure today, so they need to come back to us within a year of today. Is that correct? Or when the department actually hands the license over?
When their license is actually issued to them, there will be a little bit of a delay in that process to get everyone up and running. and to get the regulatory assessments paid and those types of things. So it will go from the date their license is actually physically issued to them.
It could be a week or 2 weeks before it's physically issued.
Yes, it could be several weeks, yes.
Okay. No more discussion on Can Arbor Inc. for a license for a provisioning center. Go ahead and call the roll.
David Lamontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
No.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
No.
Chairman, you have 3 yeses, 2 nos. Motion passes.
Okay, applicant 4 for a license, Arbor Kitchen LLC, for a processor.
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman, to grant Arbor Kitchen LLC application for a state operating license.
Second?
Okay, it's, excuse me, moved and supported to grant Arbor Kitchen a license for a processing unit. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, my comments from the previous application are identical, would be to this one.
Okay. Go ahead and call the roll on Arbor Kitchen LLC for a license for processing.
David Lamontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
No.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
No.
Chairman, you have 3 yeses, 2 nos. Motion passes.
Okay, number 5, a license for Medicinal Solutions,
Medicinal.
Medicinal Solutions Compassionate Care Corp. for a provisioning center.
And this applicant has not been pre-qualified, so this, you're considering that the first time.
Okay.
So again, what we would need is a motion either to grant or deny the application, understanding that a motion to grant also gives the applicant pre-qualification status.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, let's call the roll on the license for Medicinal Solutions
We
Compassionate.
don't have a motion, do
Gotta
we?
get a motion.
I thought we did have.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, didn't you?
Don't ask me, I don't remember.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I thought he did
It
too.
was 20 seconds ago, I don't
And
remember.
he doesn't even have 8 kids.
I think he,
I got
David did
grandkids,
put
right?
forth a, he did, right?
What?
I don't believe a motion has been
No.
made.
No, I think
No.
she was just letting
Okay.
us know that it's both. She was
Okay,
just,
all right.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to deny Medicinal Solutions Compassionate Care Corp. DBA MSC3 under section 4023A, the integrity, moral character, reputation of the applicant. And I believe it was also, there was a non-disclosure, and that would be 4022C.
Support.
Discussion.
And it would be useful to give at least a brief reason with respect to the integrity, moral character, just to briefly indicate what the specific issue is in discussion.
In discussion.
Correct.
Thank you. We're ready to
We're at
discuss.
discussion.
Mr. Chairman, on this one, in the packet, there were several screenshots of websites used by the applicant here. In one of them, again, we have a medical law. We don't have a recreational law. And so when on their internet advertising states all varieties of medicinal and recreational cannabis, that's clearly a problem. Another issue that under the 2016 law that was addressed, it was never addressed in the 2008 law, but it is in the 2016 law, which is why we're here, was allowing doctors to perform medical exams at these marijuana facilities. That's going on. That was another screenshot, I believe. That's all going on as we speak. And I think there's also, and again, the caregiver profiting, that's going on, and it's being hidden. And the money is again being run through one LLC, moved to another for final payment to avoid, showing as a medical marijuana profit. And the undisclosed arrests.
Any other discussion? So this would deny both, if passes, it would deny both the pre-qual and the license.
It would deny licensure. Similar to with pre-qualification, actually what you're doing when you deny is denying the license, giving the applicant an opportunity to request a hearing if they so choose.
Okay. Any other discussion? If not, call the roll on Municipal Solutions Compassionate Care for denial of a provisioning center.
David LaMontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
Yes.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman, you have 5 yeses, motion passes.
Okay. Number 6, last one. Is this for both or just one?
This is for both. This is pre-qualification and full licensure.
Okay. The applicant is State Line Wellness Center LLC for a licensure and a pre-qual. All one.
They weren't pre-qual before?
No, they were not.
So again, what we need is a motion either to grant or deny the application. And a motion to grant, again, would give pre-qualification status.
Mr. Chairman, just in the interest of transparency, before we go down the road here with these people, I don't know any of the applicants for this operation here, but I do business in the city of Morenci, which is where this place is located. I've had some conversations with the city manager. The chief of police is a friend of mine. The sergeant works here is a friend of mine, and I think it's probably not a conflict, but I'm going to recuse myself from voting on item 6.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to deny State Line Wellness Center LLC on 402-3A, the integrity, moral character, reputation of the applicant.
Is there support? No support? I'll support it. Can I? I can, right, Mr. Chair?
You can support.
I'll support it to get the discussion. No discussion?
No, I had to find it in my notes. Mr. Chairman, in the from what I was able to gather in looking at this application, there's a significant number of domestic assaults convictions, and many that were arrests that were no case, nolle prost, for reasons we don't know. From law enforcement, we understand that there's many reasons that have nothing to do with guilt or innocence why those things don't move forward. That's very concerning to me. There's an OWI conviction. Was that disclosed?
Yes.
Okay.
I show everything.
Okay. He has 2 rental properties that he has that he doesn't charge rent for, and it's just coincidental that they happen to be marijuana caregivers, and it just doesn't feel like he's come clean with what's going on down there. Electric bills up to $3,200 a month that he's paying for. I think this is one of those that's feeding the black market. And this is also another one that's advertising doctors at the dispensary, and that's current and ongoing. Clearly that's in the emergency, or that's in the law that can't happen. They're operating as best they can for sure. And my guess is they would have a copy of that law to know that they can't do that, but yet they are doing that. If they're doing that now, I don't have faith that going forward that there are going to be things that they won't continue to violate on the law that we do have.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, motion is to deny State Line Wellness Center LLC a provisioning center license.
And that's under section 402(3)(a), correct?
Be correct.
Thank you.
Did the attorney have to be disclosed? It was mentioned that the Devin Loker it was noted he could be related to the business, but there was not a check done on him, or did he just fill out the application? It was on.
Well, I think he's representing him.
Okay, so he's not going to be affiliated though.
We have no indication that there's anything other than just representation.
That was the only other note I had.
Nothing else? Okay, let's call the roll on denial of State Line Wellness Center LLC of a provisioning center license.
LaMontagne has recused himself, so moving on to Vivian Picard.
No.
Nicole Cover.
This is to
Deny.
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 deny. No.
Donald Bailey.
Yes.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman, you have 2 yeses, 2 nos, 1 recusal. Motion fails.
Okay, any wishes from the board for any other motions?
So we'll need a new motion, and further discussion you may want to further discuss and then vote again to see if you can get a vote to pass.
Yeah, so the only way that, I think could sway either way is the fact that this is a pre-qualification and licensure. Mm-hmm. So had we done the diligence on the pre-qualification ahead of time, I do think it would make this process a little bit easier. So I guess I would default back to you, like, I'm talking to Dawn, not you, sorry, Chris, but maybe some more detail. Again, only what you have in front of you, not your common business sense, because I have common sense too. But really with what's in front of us, I think that's what has to be considered when we look at precedence and consistency and everything that's been done prior. Not what we think they will do, because that will be determined future state. But what the concerns are truly right now in front of you.
I would agree. And some of the things that I did point out are things that are going on currently. It's not what I'm thinking is going on. That is what's going on. Sure. And I think it may be cleared up if the state police was permitted to go out there and do an investigation as they do every day in other areas. They're being relied upon for certain things now. And I think a lot of these things.
Yeah, operating.
Chris, your section does a great job of collecting data and compiling that data. And sometimes when there are questions on the information that comes in, the only way you can really get to the bottom of that is to have a face-to-face interview. Some of that has been done.
Excuse me, if we could refrain,
done.
If we could refrain from side discussions when one of the board members is talking, it's making it a little bit hard to hear what's happening. Thank you.
So maybe if we tabled this one,
That's what
Yes.
our discussion
Yeah.
was. Interfere was that?
I'm sorry.
I didn't hear what you
Rick,
said. I guess I'm.
Rick and I we were discussing that recommendation to table it.
Well, that's me. I'm out.
Okay.
If I could speak to a couple of things. Number one, as far as the doctor issue, our enforcement people have been in there. And if there were any indication that they were actively having a doctor in there are a lot of provisioning centers that have had doctors and currently are having doctors. But if there were any indication that they were currently operating with a doctor in there, I believe enforcement would have noted it in their inspection. They would have failed for that reason. They have not failed inspection. And if you're going to ask for further information, if you can clarify exactly what you're looking for, because the things that have been identified so far is criminal history.
Is it possible to move it back to the pre-qualification stage and we either approve or deny that, and we can all go back and take another look at it and table it for the operating license?
Well, the applicant has moved forward with the entire application as a whole, so that's how it needs to be handled by the board. So the applicant is here to have both pre-qualification and the operating license considered at once. So we can't break it up at this point.
Could we table it for both issues?
Yes. Can we?
Clarify, if you're tabling it for a deficiency, then you need, or additional information to discuss it or address this deficiency, you have to be specific as to what information you're tabling it for.
A police investigation.
I think that was mentioned in the past motion.
So there's no motion on the table now. We need a motion to table.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to table. Where to go?
You're going to use the same.
State Line Wellness Center LLC for follow-up by, I guess, the state police to clarify some of the financial issues that I have an issue with. That the information that Laura possesses that the state police has not had an opportunity to see for the criminal history issues regarding the domestic assaults. And what was the third thing?
That's enough, hopefully.
Yeah.
That's enough, correct?
Yeah, my desire would be to have the state police just do what the state police does when they're trying to find out what is going on with these things. We don't need to dictate to the state police what they do.
And that's an important point. This board can send it back to Lara for additional information to conduct additional investigation, but this board does not have the authority to require the state police to go back out and conduct an investigation. So what you would need to do is specify that you're tabling for additional investigation from Lara, which you've delegated the investigative authority to. They're the ones conducting the investigations for licensing purposes.
As you bring that up, the board is the one that asked the state police into the process, and in the law it says that the state police is working for the board, so it's kind of a two-master kind of a deal. Who were they requested in by, and that was by the board. And my suggestion is we just let the state police do the state police thing that they do and find out what's going on with some of these areas in the application that are causing concern.
Any other discussion? Motion is to table.
Need a second.
We didn't you second?
Second.
Yeah. Nicole. Okay, for more discussion, the motion is to table. Do we want to put a date on that or leave it open like we did before?
Let's leave it open until they are ready to present it. So
So when the file information changes in whatever way, we would ask that that's when it come back onto the agenda. So when
Yeah.
they're,
when you're
whenever
ready.
you're able to complete the department.
Sounds good.
And Chris, for your purposes, you would be able to get that information updated in the application and resubmit to the board with additional information. Is that how you would handle it?
Yes, that's how we would handle it.
Thank you.
Or tell us unchanged or whatever your findings are, right?
Okay, call the roll.
Vivian Picard,
Yes.
Nicole Cover,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
Yes.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman Johnson, you have 4 yeses. Motion passes.
Okay, is the director here? Thanks, Chris, for all your help. We need it sometimes, don't we?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board members, appreciate your diligence in reviewing these files. I know this was a pretty robust agenda today. I don't envy your task in reviewing all this and trying to synthesize it for the purposes of discussion, but we appreciate all your work. Excited as we all are to have actually approved the first license in this process so we can move things forward. As usual, I want to give you an update on where we stand in terms of the volume of applications. As of last Friday, the 6th of July, we had 594 paid and submitted pre-qualification applications, 16 Class A growers, 4 Class B growers, 101 Class C growers, 37 processors, 114 provisioning centers, 9 secure transporters, and 6 safety compliance facilities. And we currently stand, based on our unofficial count, at 97 municipalities that have adopted an ordinance to opt in under the MMFLA. Any questions about any of those statistics? No? Also wanted to keep the board apprised, although you are sent all these bulletins, that we issued a number of bulletins since the last meeting on May 31st in our continuing attempt to educate the participants in the industry as well as the public about this new program and specific facets of it as we find we receive a number of questions about them, or we're seeing things as we continue our field operations. On June 1st, we sent out a bulletin regarding Ohio patient ID cards and out-of-state registrations. June 11th, about the use of terms that are permissible, or more importantly, not permissible under the Public Health Code, specifically the term dispensary. June 18th, we issued our first compliance tips for licensees. That is the first and will be a continuing series of targeted compliance tips for operating facilities, both temporarily operating as well as those that achieve licensure, regarding largely products that we find that there are concerns with, so that everyone that's operating in the industry can receive that information instead of on a one-off basis. They can get those kind of updates as we find things that need to be addressed, so that licensees are afforded the opportunity to proactively address those concerns. On June 19th, we issued some information in a partnership with the Department of Health and Human Services regarding the hepatitis A infection outbreak in the state. That the users of medical marijuana as well as these facilities this is valuable information for them, as there was no link specifically in the outbreak to the medical marijuana industry, but it does carry the potential. So we felt that was important to get that information out. As well, on June 19th, we issued a bulletin regarding hazardous materials. That's specific to fire code requirements and notification requirements that facilities have. July 3rd, reminders for processing facilities. July 5th, health and safety guidance for facilities. July 6th, proficiency testing guidelines for safety compliance facilities. Again, on July 2nd, compliance tips for licensees. And on July 10th, just some information about the new conditions that were approved by Director Edgerton for qualifying for medical marijuana registry cards. Any questions from any of the board members about any of those topics? No, very good. And then just generally want to speak about the status of the program. This is for the board's edification, but also for the public at large as we continue to move toward this September 15th deadline. A reminder that the review of applications is a very detailed and time-consuming process, and it should be expected for applicants that there will be a back and forth as we pull information out. The new documentation, we get responses to previous questions, generally will lead to additional requests. So in terms of expediting the process, it is imperative that applicants get us the information timely. We're routinely finding that notices of deficiency are not being answered completely or timely, and that is affecting the process. In many cases, working through intermediaries can have a tendency to slow things down. In order to try and mitigate that slowdown, we will start sending notices of deficiency to all contacts that are available on the record, so that the person that may be responsible for providing the information, if there are several, is notified directly and can work toward providing that information quickly. Also wanted to remind applicants that they must disclose all bank accounts for which they have authority to make transactions. One of the main things we're finding routinely is that applicants are not disclosing all those bank accounts, and that the evaluation of the financial records has to start over again as soon as those additional accounts are uncovered and the correspondence goes back and forth. And a reminder that all of that information and all the back and forth is provided to the board members for their consideration in terms of the compliance of applicants and getting all that information to us as is requested as part of the application process. We're also finding as we continue to conduct investigation, or I should say inspections in the field of the facilities, as we move toward the consideration of more step 2 applications and the issuance of full licenses, we are finding that those facilities are not ready to be inspected, or they're not passing inspection. We certainly, it's a time-consuming process to schedule an inspection to show up at a facility that isn't prepared to be inspected yet. So we try and communicate with those facilities to ensure they're ready for us to be inspected. It would be much better for us to have an applicant identify the fact that they're going to need an extra week to be prepared versus having us show up and then having spent the time and have to reschedule it later on. And we also would encourage applicants to look at those bulletins that we put out. We did create sort of unofficial checklists of all the criteria that our inspectors are going to be evaluating in the field, so that you can be aware of what we're going to be looking at, so you can conduct an internal inspection, if you will, to ensure that you're meeting all those criteria, so we don't have to show up and tell you that you're not, and then have to schedule another inspection after those deficiencies are corrected. Also want to make sure all temporary operators are beginning to consider how they make the transition to being a licensed facility and the impact on their current business operation. That's a reminder that this transition to being a licensed facility will require the entry of any product in your possession into the metric system and linking that information with test results. This also includes the requirement that, say, in the case of a provisioning center, any product you have on hand cannot be sold as a licensed facility until it has passed all tests that are required under the rules. So applicants should certainly consider the time frame that that's going to take to get that product tested before it's available for retail sale. And also a consideration of establishing business relationships with other licensed facilities in the supply chain. So as a provisioning center, considering those relationships with licensed grow operations, processing operations, and obviously safety compliance facilities and secure transporters to ensure that there's a smooth transition. I think it's reasonable to expect it's going to be a challenge to move from a temporarily operating facility into operation as a licensed facility immediately. It's going to take some time to get all that information into the system to ensure compliance. And the last thing we want to have happen is that a facility that's granted a license by the board and issued by the department then finds themselves in a non-compliant status and having to answer complaints for violations because they just continue to operate as they were and they haven't moved themselves and had an understanding of how they get from point A to point B, and ensuring that their business plan incorporates how they make that transition. I do think it's important to note that that 9/15 deadline looming, and everyone's aware of the pace that applications are being considered, that certainly not every application in the pipeline is going to be considered by the board by that 9/15 deadline. So facilities that are in the process need to have consideration for how that is going to impact your business operation. And if your license is not issued by September 15th, that you have a plan in place to not continue so as to impede your ability to get licensure if you continue to operate. You cannot be presented to the board without a field inspection. So if you're continuing to operate past that deadline without licensure, that information will certainly be captured and presented to the board. We did some quick statistics, and we had 215 temporarily operating facilities that had applied by February 15th. By our rough estimates, fewer than 40% of those have filed the Step 2 application. If you are a temporarily operating facility that has not filed a Step 2 application, it is highly unlikely, if not impossible, that your full application is going to be presented to the board by that 9/15 deadline. We've encouraged through the past several meetings and through our communications that it's imperative that those Step 2 applications get filed. If you have not filed one yet and you're a temporarily operating facility, I would find it highly unlikely that you're going to be able to be licensed by that 9/15 deadline. And I'm happy to take any questions about that from board members as well, or anything else.
Director Brisboe, regarding Rule 19, I believe it might have been May and early June, there were a couple of issues in the city of Detroit where growers, Detroit PD, executed search warrants on grow operations in the city. And I saw some comments in the paper from one of the attorneys, talked about having a temporary license to operate those grow operations. And that, in fact, is not correct. Am I correct in that?
It is a bit of a misnomer. This process that we're engaging in today is the opportunity to be issued with a state license. Prior to today, no facility had state authorization to operate a facility. Rule 19 merely provided some coverage for temporarily operating facilities from being denied licensure simply by the fact that they were operating, but was not an authorization from the state and was not a license from the state to operate a facility. That's correct.
So really, Rule 19 affects the board as how we treat applicants.
Correct. And they have to meet, they have to have met and continue to meet all of those conditions, those being the application by February 15th and continuing to have municipal authorization. We did notify facilities that there has been progress made in certain municipalities on the processing of applications. So if we were made aware that an attestation E was signed by a municipality for a specific facility and subsequently was withdrawn by the municipality, we notified that facility that they needed to cease operation. And we will be following up on those notifications as well as the cease and desist notices that we issued earlier in the year and bringing that information to the board's attention.
You've had that situation where the municipality withdrew their...
Correct.
Okay.
As the municipalities are working through, there have been several that issued attestation E's as they work through the process and as they are refining their list of approved venues, they are sending us that information. Okay. Yes.
So this board is who issues licenses, and I think a couple of them were licenses were issued today.
Correct.
So the department has not issued a license because that's not within your purview. That's the board.
Correct.
So, okay, just to make that clear, that there are no licenses out there save for what happened here today. Everybody else is, I think the verbiage you used in notifications was you operate at your own risk.
Correct. It is a business risk for continued operation. There is no legal authorization to operate a facility in Michigan until they are licensed by the board.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nothing else? Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is public comment. We have some cards here. Dan Munzu, am I saying all right? Munuz?
Yep, that's me.
That's you?
My name's Dan Munoz.
You get that?
Good morning to the board and Laura, officials that are here, and I want to commend everybody here. On the pace in which everything is moving forward, you guys really took a big chunk of applications today, and I just want to commend you for that. My comment is about access to information, and I would urge the board to follow suit of our neighbors to the south in Ohio, and they've published all of their medical marijuana applicants and license holders, all their contact information on the Ohio Department of Commerce website, and I would urge Michigan to do the same. So folks like me who have decided to stay in Michigan through all the ups and downs and try to not only be a caregiver for many patients, but also make a living doing this as I work for a supplier in this industry. And so I just urge you to do that to help us all out here in Michigan. The other comment I wanted to make was I've heard a few comments about the High Times connection and some of these applicants. I just wanted to make a kind of informed statement that a lot of these events that are here locally that High Times sponsors, yes, they've been around for a long time and they've supported in the past recreational marijuana, but the events that they sponsor here in Michigan are specifically labeled medical events, and they do require medical cards to get into those events. So to just assume that an applicant is associated in the rec business is not necessarily accurate, as they do specify. But thank you.
Thank you. Ron Whittle, is it?
Hello, board. Again, I just want to express my thank you for doing everything that you do. I'll be brief as possible. I just want to point out, as a applicant, there's been a whole market created, in this industry, whether it's through attorneys and lobbyists and people that are advising us on what to do, what to disclose. There's even a website that you can go on that says, hey, we'll give you your full criminal background, and it's guaranteed it'll find everything and such. I'm most likely an early applicant, so I would just ask the board to consider, I don't know how to word it the best way, but a little leeway for early applicants that weren't able to sit here and observe these meetings, kind of understand the demeanor of the board and how you guys are perceiving things. This is the first meeting I've attended, and I really understand now where everyone is at, and that's helpful. But, unfortunately, everything has already been submitted from my attorney and people that have advised me to do things a certain way. I'm a young entrepreneur. I'm a business owner. I'm a very reputable person, but I have some disclosures of, a traffic offense that I didn't disclose. It was 5-6 years ago, and I didn't have my.
Excuse me, we'll want to avoid discussion
Okay.
about
I'm
pending
sorry.
applications and getting into details.
Gotcha.
You can talk broadly. Thank you.
Understood. So, in a nutshell, I'm just asking the board that they kind of have somewhat of an open mind on future applicants when it comes to failure to disclose and things like that. It was just a bit alarming to me hearing certain things come up, and then it was like, oh, failure to disclose, denied. When I just think that, like I said, there's been such a market created outside of this, and how certain people have been advised. It's been a bit unclear, so I ask that the board just does consider that, and I appreciate everything you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Patricia Turnbull.
To the mic.
Here's this one if you want.
Hi, I'm Patricia from Shelby Township, and I just wanted the board, I just really feel you should grant licenses to people that want to do the right thing and get into the regulated market. I mean, I think the biggest threat to the state is that the black market, and I just feel that denying applicants, you are only making that black market stronger. That's it.
Thank you. Kathy Warble. No.
Hello. Hello. I was sitting back there, but you don't all have microphones, so I couldn't hear a lot of the going-ons. So it'd be nice if you had microphones. But then I was going to tell you that the board has been compared to the liquor license many times in the media and by Laura. Many of the first applicants submitted their application using a lawyer that was familiar with the liquor license application process. Many of the lawyers informed their clients that the jury records were not related or to be disclosed. These applicants are now getting denied licenses for failure to disclose. I don't think that the applicant's jury record should need to be disclosed, and if it does, it should be stated clearly on the application. People just didn't realize it. And juveniles are juveniles. I don't think that really should play such a big part in deciding how they're doing now. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane Regis. This lady.
Hi, I'm Diane from Washington. And I find it a little troubling that the board is so quick to
approve operating dispensaries that don't pay taxes, and yet the active caregivers that do pay taxes are having a really hard time getting into the commercial market. So.
Okay, thank you. Christina Hurst.
Yes.
He'll get you the microphone. She's in a wheelchair.
Oh, okay.
He's got you.
Great.
Hi, I'm Christina. Thank you all so much for the approvals and everything you did today. I just wanted to mention a little bit about, I mean, these a lot of the people, a lot of the applicants who do have like juvenile records. I mean, I don't think I'm allowed to ask you questions about that, but the people that you're considering, I mean, who have juvenile records, I just don't think that should go against them, because really, I feel like that's going to make these people, these applicants, find other business owners to represent them, and the actual owner of the company won't be the person, who's actually in charge of the whole operation. I would just like you to consider, I mean, not taking into account the juvenile records mostly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hoffman?
Okay, it's almost good afternoon, isn't it? I feel like this has been one of the shorter meetings, so I think we're all appreciative of that. Okay, so my questions are as follows. My credentials are I'm the chair of the Cannabis Cultivators Committee of the National Cannabis Industrialists Association. So my first question pertains to cultivators. I'd like to know if it's permissible for growers to package usable bud for themselves on site. If growers are permitted to package in-house, it would reduce the costs and increase the speed to market, which is going to be an issue in this industry. Who is responsible for standardization of the weights of bud, and who is responsible for maintaining the integrity of those measurement devices? Will it be some third-party certification? I'm the owner of Handgrown Workforce, so my next line of questions pertains to employment. It's my job to connect the people that want to work in the cannabis industry with the individuals that are being granted licenses by you. And so, following up and echoing my last line of questioning, I'd like to know if the guidelines have been set for onboarding employees with criminal backgrounds. What is the employment eligibility timetable, and when will you start making determinations on employment eligibility? Lastly, whether or not an employee is hired and eligible to work at a specific site, or if they have clearance to work in the industry at large, which in my professional opinion may be a less cumbersome option. Thank you for your time and addressing my questions.
Thank you. Monica Alade? Lod? There.
Good afternoon. My name is Monica Alade. I think my question may have been answered already. I'm in the beginning process of my application. So I'm here today. I've been at Bay City trying to just get all the information, proper information I need to complete my application process. I've been to like CanaCon and stuff just to kind of get a feel of what type of capital I would need to go off into this venture. So I'm just going to read my question off just to make sure it has been answered. If a person or company don't have the capital yet, which from my research may take thousands to millions of dollars as a startup company, and you get into the, let's say, phase 2, but you don't have your building ready to operate, will that hinder you from actually getting a license? I think, Chris, you may have answered this before.
And the public comment is an opportunity to provide your comments and questions, but not necessarily for the board or department staff to answer right now. But you can follow up with the department later and they can help you with your questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jacqueline Langwith.
Good morning, Jacqueline Langwith, representing Policella and Associates. We have noted the board's decision to deny applications based on caregivers receiving income from consulting. And we'd like to point out that it is very common in the industry, it has been and it still is, that people with experience, whether they're caregivers or not, experience with growing, the proper fertilizers to use, lighting systems, growth mediums, and in the construction field with growing or building grow rooms, frequently and commonly have consulted and provided their knowledge and their experience to beginning patients or beginning caregivers. And we've noted that, and they've done all this without ever handling any marijuana. So it seems that the board is presuming that anybody who does consulting and makes an income in this industry is breaking the law, and we would like to respectfully request that you consider that they are consultants who have never handled the marijuana but are providing their experience and their knowledge to others, and that they are doing this lawfully without breaking any laws. Thank you.
Thank you. Devin Loker. Sue.
Good morning. I would like to echo what was been said about the cannabis cup here in Michigan, and that's medically specific. It's a tent that you have to have your patient card to get into. So when we dog PSI for testing products for patients, I think that's wrong. Also, the original MMMA prohibits discriminating against card holders by licensing boards, which is what you are. So I'd like us to treat caregivers and caregiver operations in just a little bit better a light than truly criminals. A lot of these people are hardworking citizens, been in this state, this country their whole life. That being said, I'd like to take a second for those watching on the internet to make sure we show up in November and vote to regulate this like alcohol.
Not here to advertise. Jury will disregard that last comment. Tom Levine, is that how you say it? Why always goose me up?
Hi. Attorney Thomas Levine with Cannabis Council and MI Legalize. The People versus McQueen case held that sales are allowed by caregivers. While there had been some prior case law concerning caregivers, there had been a lower court decision that had held that sales is not a transfer, and but the Supreme Court cleared all that up. And People versus McQueen, it held sales are allowed by caregivers. Section 4F of the Medical Marijuana Act, says that caregivers may receive compensation for costs associated with assisting a registered caregiver. Any such compensation does not constitute a sale of a controlled substance. They're referring to a crime of the sale. Now, labor costs are allowable business costs. They always have been. They always will be. Labor costs are costs of doing business. There's no requirement that caregivers were nonprofit organizations. Lara wouldn't have didn't accept filing for such things. So there's that. There's also nothing illegal about one caregiver helping a newbie set up a room as long as they don't step foot in the enclosed lock facility with plants in it. But people who have worked construction their whole life or have experience in horticulture to consult somebody, a patient or a caregiver who's new at this, this is legal and should not be presumed illegal by the board. I'm sorry to inform you that the city of Detroit has a bit of an integrity issue. So I'd encourage your attorney generals to, read their ordinance themselves. Don't call them on the phone and ask what's going on. At the last board meeting, I was informed that, a call was made to the city of Detroit and misinformed Bummer that the city of Detroit did not allow temporary operation by grows, that the ordinance did not allow for grows. This is entirely inaccurate. The prior ordinance, the Medical Marijuana Caregiver Center, allowed for growing, provisioning, and processing. The vote of the people voted in an ordinance adopting all 5 license types under the MMFLA. So I know they're trying to disenfranchise the voters in Detroit, but there is an ordinance in place, and grows are allowed as temporary operators in the city of Detroit.
Thank you. Aaron Steitlitz, I'm not sure how you say it. Stieylitz. Aaron, first name. Aaron? No Aaron here? You just yell out there. No Aaron? Okay, we're done with public comment. We move to closed session. Before we make the motion, I just want to let the public know that we'll be back after closed session. There'll be no activity. We'll just come back to formally adjourn. So you're welcome to stay if you want, but truly up to you. I need a motion to go to closed session.
Motion to go to closed session.
Support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. The board will meet in a closed session under Section 8H of the Open Meetings Act to consider material subject to the attorney-client privilege that is exempt from public disclosure under Section 13(1)G of the Freedom of Information Act. We need a roll call on that, don't we?
We do need a roll call vote on going into closed session, yes.
Go ahead and call the roll.
David LaMontagne.
Yes.
Vivian Picard.
Yes.
Nicole Cover.
Yes.
Donald Bailey.
Yes.
Chairman Rick Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman Johnson, your motion passes. Yeah. And then down.
Thank you.
I don't know. We're
Now who's supposed to be taking our computers?
if somebody are taking the computer.